Warning, this video contains team selection and captain choices which some viewers may find offensive.
Hey guys, and welcome back to FPL TV. Before looking to the upcoming double game week 23, let's first see how the wildcard team performed in the previous game week. Wildcarding last week was a decision likely seen as very questionable by some, and don't get me wrong, even by myself many times after pulling the trigger. And that was due to me making just 8 changes to the previous squad and keeping the main core of my old team. As explained in my last video though, I felt a little bit behind the curve in terms of where I wanted my squad to be. I wanted to restructure to a 3-5-2 going forward, and also wanted to rearrange my bench a bit for the rest of the season, considering I'm now rid of the bench boost chip. A big part of me wanting to wildcard too was wanting to get onto a triple up of Arsenal players for the long term, with a double this week in game week 23, now a double in game week 25, as well as importantly not having a blank game week at least until game week 32 at minimum. With a fixture against their 19th placed Everton in game week 22 as well, that seemed to me a good opportunity to bring them all in now, with immediate returns looking very likely. Sadly, that wasn't the case last week, with new appointment Sean Dyche having an instant impact at the Toffees and Arsenal losing 1-0 in that shock result. A bad start for the Arsenal triple up there, but no concerns for me yet with these 3 going forward. They're arguably 3 of the most nailed players in that Arsenal team, and I'm happy to be on this triple up now for the long term. Despite being on the wildcard, as mentioned, I kept the core of my previous squad, and fortunately sticking with Kepa ended up being a good decision. The wildcard is often a good chance to make a goalkeeper switch, and I was very close to doing just that, so I was quite pleased to have stuck by Kepa in the end. The reason I did stick with Kepa is that Chelsea notably don't blank in game weeks 25 or 28, so that, coupled with his budget-friendly price, made him a good long-term hold for those without a wildcard. Other core members that remained included the likes of Shaw and Rashford, easy choices considering they had an appealing double in game week 22. Obviously Rashford's 20-pointer very pleasing seeing as though he was my captain, but of course a slight negative here too, considering just how successful of a game week this was for triple captainers. With my triple captainship still in hand, am I going to beat a 20-pointer? Well, that is very, very unlikely, I'd say. A super result for anyone that did use the triple captaincy chip, and congratulations to you. I may not beat 20 points, but hopefully I can still use it as effectively in a later game week. As for the bigger changes to my squad, well, wildcarding allowed me to bring in Bruno Fernandes for his double hit free, and he managed a pleasing 12-pointer thanks to scoring from the spot. Not bad. Perhaps the biggest moment in my game week though came on the final day, with my big differential inclusion of Gnonto bagging a goal and all 3 bonus against United, whereas the forward I had in my old squad was Ivan Toney, who only managed a 1-pointer at home to Southampton. A 10-point gain there, which was a big boost for the choice to wildcard. I'm also now very happy to own Gnonto going forward, as he fits the 3-5-2 structure well, he looks very lively for his budget price, whilst also being cheap enough to leave on my bench when needed. Notably, he also boasts a home fixture against Southampton in blank game week 25, so potentially a very handy inclusion. I'd say the one regret in my wildcard squad selection was making the surprise inclusion of Chelsea's Mudryk as a differential too. This was a move that couldn't have started much worse, to be honest, frustratingly being hooked at half-time for a 1-pointer against Fulham. The reason I included Mudryk was, as mentioned before, Chelsea not having a blank game week in 25 or 28, so I was thinking of the long term here, but honestly I'm already considering to reverse that decision. So for game week 22, in the end, the wildcard team scored a respectable tally of 90 points. Due to the triple captainship being a huge success for lots of managers, of course 90 is nothing compared to some of the bigger scores out there. However, thanks mainly to Gnonto on the final day giving the score a big differential boost, 90 is a respectable finish and I'm pleased enough with it. Not overjoyed of course, but happy enough. 90 points takes me from 707k to just outside the top 500k now, a nice rise of 200,000 places, and in fairness my highest rank of the season so far, so all in all not too shabby. As for the verdict on the use of the wildcard, well, if I hadn't have activated it, the move I was almost certain to have made was taking a -4 hit to bring in Gabriel and Bruno Fernandes, and had I done that, then my previous squad would have scored 80 points with a -4, so 76 all out. 14 points worse off than the wildcard squad. I'd also now be looking at a further -4 hit this week to bring in Bukayo Saka for his double, selling Toney in the process to make it happen, so that's then an 18-point difference. With that considered, although of course having the wildcard in hand later in the season would still be incredibly handy, the decision to wildcard last week was in the end not a terrible result. I'm 18 points better off for it and now much happier with my squad going forward. Of course, what this doesn't take into consideration, granted, is that if I hadn't have wildcarded last week, I could have activated the triple captainship instead, and arguably have been a little bit better off, finishing the game week on 96 points all out. But that is completely hypothetical now, because using the triple captain was far from a sure thing for me last week, and there's every chance I'd have held on to it anyway. So with all that discussed, it's now finally time to start looking forward. Let's move on to game week 23 and see how the squad currently lines up. Also, if you do enjoy my FPL ramblings here on FPL TV, then please do be sure to support the channel by leaving a like and, most importantly, getting subscribed. You can also hit the notification bell so you never miss an FPL TV upload. It really does help the channel. Naturally, having just utilised the wildcard, very happy with how the squad now lines up for game week 23, with the Arsenal triple up I wanted ahead of their double game week. Of course, they're players I probably should have had since the restart really, but no going back now, just happy to own them moving forward. Rico Lewis will make his debut for me this week, with Man City 2 boasting a double in 23. The 3.9 million budget enabler isn't guaranteed to start both games, but I'm hoping he can at least come close to scoring what his defensive counterparts will do this week. If he can do that with over $1 million saving from the likes of Ake or Akanji, then I'll consider that to be a positive. When he has played this season, I've been very impressed with Lewis, and has arguably looked the more dangerous of the City defensive assets. And with Cancelo now out on loan, I was happy to take the gamble on Lewis, who at 3.9 million could be an absolute bargain. Mitrovic also comes in from the bench this week, a player that I kept on the wildcard due to him having a fixture in blank game week 25. He's been a poor asset in recent weeks, but hopefully he can do the business here at home to Forest. My concern here, however, is that a fixture against Forest at the moment isn't the favourable fixture it once was before the break. In fact, in the last 5 games they've only conceded 2 goals, keeping 3 clean sheets in that spell, and are really improving. That makes me feel a lot less optimistic about Mitrovic this game week, particularly with Gnonto currently making way for him on my bench. Casemiro being out for United also a big plus for the Italian there, as he just proved in midweek. With that said, I simply can't bring myself to bench Mitrovic at home to Forest. I think I'd feel very foolish doing so if it did end up backfiring. Luke Shaw currently benched in my squad too, and that'll likely remain. As mentioned, without Casemiro, United don't look as solid defensively, so happy enough to take the risk there, and it's just hard to fit him in this week. As for my transfers this week, well, despite being in a decent position to roll, my initial plan when wildcarding last week was always to bring Kevin De Bruyne back into the fold ahead of Man City's double. To be fair, he's not been in his best form in recent weeks, so doesn't feel as essential as I'd thought he'd feel heading into this double game week, particularly following his benching against Tottenham last time out, and all this controversy that Man City find themselves in at the moment. However, all that said, I still think avoiding the Belgian ahead of a double is very difficult, especially with games against Forest and Bournemouth to come immediately after, importantly with one of those being in blank game week 25. So if I am to make a transfer this week, then it'll only be for him. The initial planned move this week was therefore Bruno Fernandes to Kevin De Bruyne, and that was a move with the longer term in mind, United having a blank game week in 25, while City won't blank and also have an extra fixture this week. Now of course, I don't love the idea of selling Bruno ahead of Leeds and Leicester first, but it's something I still may have to do before the deadline. Alternatively, with 5.6 million in the bank, I could keep Bruno for the next 2 game weeks and simply upgrade Mudryk to De Bruyne this week instead. And if I was thinking only for game week 23, then that's absolutely what I'd do. However, despite Mudryk looking a poor signing so far, I included him with this plan in mind, to be set up nicely for upcoming blank game weeks, and he's still a nice differential for me. Who knows, perhaps the return of João Felix could also bring the best out of him. So that's the transfer activity I'm weighing up this week. Kevin De Bruyne very likely coming in with 1 free transfer, with either Mudryk or Bruno Fernandes making way. Bruno the player I'd love to keep over the short term, but keeping him and selling Mudryk instead would take me 1 step back on the wildcard plan I put together last week. For the captaincy in game week 23, it'll almost certainly go back to Haaland ahead of his double, and that's something I've barely wavered on. It was of course only ever going to go to an Arsenal or City player this week for their doubles, and although Saka or Odegaard are both very worthy considerations, I'm just not sure personally I can back them over the explosiveness of Haaland, who we've already seen bag 4 hat-tricks this season. Their first opponents of the game week, Aston Villa, just shipping 4 goals to Leicester last time out, also a big plus here, and with De Bruyne hopefully coming back into the starting lineup for this one, surely that can only benefit Haaland, with City looking for a reaction. With my triple captainship still in hand, there is a strong consideration to use it on Haaland here. However, given one of the fixtures is away to league leaders Arsenal, and with City not quite firing on all cylinders at the moment, I may continue to hold on to it. Obviously, with Haaland being such an unbelievable FPL asset this season, I still have the intention to use the chip on him at some point, and that is one reason to maybe put it on him now this week, as no other doubles are currently confirmed for Man City. So that's the risk I'd be taking should I not use the chip on him this week, simply hoping another double game week falls for City later in the season, or instead having to use it on another player at some point. And that's everything discussed regarding my team for Game Week 23. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and get subscribed. Either Mudryk or Fernandes to Kevin De Bruyne, the likely free transfer this week, whilst holding on to the triple captainship is probably my preferred move. However, these decisions won't be finalised until shortly before the game week deadline. Good luck to you all for the upcoming game week, FPL responsibly, and I'll catch you all very soon.